It is so good catching up with you again because the story and the work you've done has progressed quite a lot in the last few years. You have some new books out, you've regressed many, many more people. And what I love about what you're doing is this mosaic of individual experiences that is creating a larger picture of where we're headed as a species and where the Earth is headed itself. And Dolores, what I'd like to start with is this whole notion of first the volunteer souls that have come for this time, and then start working through the wave 1, 2, and 3 people that have been born, their jobs and how they're executing it and what their source is.
Okay, because since we worked together, I've done a lot more work and gone into a whole different direction than I was before. And a lot of it is focusing on the new Earth that we're moving into. And these times right now with the changing of the vibrations and the frequencies, that everything is different. This is a very exciting time to be alive. But that's one thing that people want me to talk about is the 3 waves of volunteers. We get thousands of emails saying, I know I am first wave, I am second wave. They're identifying with it because they said for the first time it makes sense to them. Their whole life they have felt something wasn't right. Mm-hmm. And now it begins to make sense as we start giving the, what I want to call, not the symptoms, but the characteristics of the 3 waves. But to know about the 3 waves, I'm not going to have time to go back to the whole beginning.
No.
But it has to do with the ETs and the way they have watched over the Earth since it was created, because they're the ones that created us and the seeding of the planet Earth. And they've been there all through Earth's history, watching us and taking care of us. And whenever something was needed in our timeline, they would supply it. Like whenever we needed learn about fire, we learned about agriculture, all of this was brought in at those times. And every time something is supposed to be in our timeline, a new invention or something, they help it to get here. And in the old days, they were thought of as gods and goddesses because they lived among the people to teach them what they were supposed to do. Now they can't do it. So that whenever something is needed, a new idea, a new invention, it has to be in our timeline, it is put into the atmosphere. And then whoever invents it gets it. They don't care who does. And you know, there are many people all over the world working on the same invention at the same time. Mm-hmm. Well, this was going along rather smoothly because they said a lot of times they would give us something and we turn around and use it for the wrong reason. And you got to remember, this was a planet, they said, give this beautiful planet a creature with intelligence and free will and see what they do with it.
Yes.
So that's what they've been allowing us to do, these things.
The grand experiment.
And the prime directive is the one on Star Trek of non-interference. You cannot interfere with the development of a civilization. So they've been watching us and observing us. And every time they would give us something, we turn it into a weapon or something like that. And I asked them one time, isn't that interference to give us fire, give us agriculture? And they said no, because that is a gift we give you at one time at your point of development. And then what you do with it is free will. And as we turn it around and use it negative, that's our free will to do that. And I said, well, can't you come back and tell them they're doing it wrong? They said, no, because that is interference. That's what's not allowed. So this brings us up to the 3 waves. Because at the end of World War II, when we dropped the atomic bomb, really got their attention. And if you remember, at the end of World War II is when the big UFO flap began.
Yes.
And we began seeing...
the response to it in 1947, Project Blue Book, all these different
all
responses.
All of it started at the end of the war.
Yes, the NSA.
Because they were observing up until then, you know, shaking their heads, here we go through this awful World War II. But it was like we still had to let us keep doing what we were doing. But then we dropped the atomic bomb, and they got down here. They said, we better see what these kids are up to, because they should not have had this power yet. It was not supposed to be given to us until we could use it in the right way. It was supposed to be used positive. Instead, when it was invented as negative for a weapon. And it will never have the energy it was supposed to have because of that. It was supposed to be positive.
Well, could a positive use have been the proper use of it for an energy supply, for example, for nuclear energy
That's what it
supplies
was
around the
supposed
planet?
to be.
Yes.
But we weren't ready yet to have it because they knew what we would do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So we got it too soon. So that's what they were worried about. Now with the Prime Directive, the only time they can really interfere with a civilization is if it gets to the point that we're going to blow up the world. If that happens, they would have to step in. Because if we were to blow up the world, it would send reverberations not only through our planet, but through the whole solar system, through the galaxies, and through the universes. And it would cause tremendous damage. So you would think one little planet over here isolated in this part of the solar system wouldn't be important.
But we have a multidimensional Earth, which it would have also impacted the other. Please take a drink. It would have also impacted the other dimensions
Yes.
of Earth.
They
and
said
we don't
that
stop
also.
to think about that. Yes. So the reverberations would have been felt wide and far if we had
They
succeeded
said
in this.
it would be as though undeclared war on the other dimensions
Yes.
where there other civilizations are existing. So something like that happened, they would have to come in and stop it. That's the only way they could. So when the atomic war began, the atomic bomb began, they were really upset about it because these kids are not going to know how to handle this. And they could very well blow up the world with it because they don't know what to do with it. So there are councils that are over all of these things. There are rules and regulations. Nothing is it's just by happenstance. Everything has rules and regulations that are put on it. So they go back to the council and they're telling them, oh, we don't know what we're going to do. We can't interfere. So it's like, what are we going to do? They couldn't just come in and say, stop this, because that's interference. So they said they had a meeting with the council. And it was like, we know we can't interfere from the outside. They came up with this plan that I consider to be brilliant. They said, what if we influence from the inside? So that was when they made the call, went out for volunteers to come and help Earth.
So this would have been late 40s, early 50s
Yes.
then, that the first
This
wave...
is where I tried to put dates and years on the 3 waves.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter says I might be a little too strict on it because some people tell me they think they are overlapping the ages that I've come up with. But it says to send out for volunteers, I'm sorry, pure souls that have never been to Earth before, have never been contaminated. See, most of Earth, the souls of Earth, are contaminated with karma. Many lives, one after the other, contaminating with karma, having to repeat it again and again, and we're still not working it out.
Not learning.
We're caught on the wheel of karma. So they said they knew we weren't going to be able to do it. We just come through this horrible war. We couldn't take care of ourselves. We can't take care of our own lives because of the repeating of karma. We couldn't do it. So the volunteers were asked to come who had never been on Earth before, never been in a human body. They were not contaminated. They were pure souls who were asked to come. Now in my work, none of the people I work with know this consciously. It's only found out whenever we do the sessions, it all comes out. Otherwise, they're just confused, troubled people. They don't know what they're doing here. But the first wave, the ones I called the first wave, had the most problem of all. They were the way showers, the beginners that had to come in. Now, when I do sessions now, the only time I have people going into past lives are those who have karma to be repaid. They're not going to past lives anymore. They're either going back to where they were on spaceships, they were living on other planets, living in other dimensions, even living as light beings. They were highly evolved, and they volunteered to come and help the Earth. Or they go back to the source. And I have whole sections in my book describing what everyone says the source is, God. They all describe it the same way. These are souls that have never been in any kind of a body at all. Can you imagine how traumatic it would be to come pure from the source and to this world
Yes,
now?
I can. Very disturbing, very
But
challenging.
many people have done that. They go back to the source where they are one with God, where we all began. People are always asking me, they say in their session, I want to know where I'm from. So we're all from the same place. And they want to know, well, what about my home? I said, it's all the same place. They think of a home planet or something like that. That's not what it's about. It's all us. We all came from the source, from God, and that's where we all began. And when they're there, it is so full of love, and it's all this togetherness that they don't want to leave.
Yes.
So in the sessions, I asked them, well, why did you leave? It was so beautiful. I know they left because I'm talking to a body that's laying on the bed. Why did you leave? And they all say the same thing. We heard the call. They heard the call that went out, even to the other planets, to the space people, and to the ones who had never been out in from the source. We heard the call, Earth is in trouble. Will you go and help? And many of them describe meetings on the spirit side even, where they're saying, who wants to go and help? And I had one woman said, and I raised my hand. And she said, what was I thinking of?
No, there you go. So here she is, and here many of them are. And this story, so there are these consistencies you're hearing.
Oh,
from
I
these
do
waves.
thousands and thousands of people.
Yes.
When you get the same story for so many people, I put this all together like a puzzle,
Yes.
bits and pieces. So the first wave are the ones that had the most trouble. I guess you would say they were in their later 50s, some were in their 40s, but some people say they think the early 60s would fall into the same pattern. It probably will, because that's about how long ago that we dropped the bomb. But these are the ones who don't want to be here. They're very unhappy. They have good families, they have jobs, but they don't want to be here. They don't like it. They want to go home. They don't know where home is, but they know it's not here. They don't like the violence, they don't understand it, and many of these first wavers have tried to commit suicide at different points in their life to get out of here.
I have a question at this point. If they came in and they went through the traditional thing that happens when you incarnate here, which is essentially a case of amnesia, and they don't understand consciously what they're doing here, what are they functionally doing while they're here to help shift those frequencies or further this evolutionary process?
The first wave are just living like everybody else. It's the second wave that are doing different things. But the first wave are the ones who don't want to be here, and they wanted to commit suicide, and they've had a very hard time. But the second wave, I found, would be in their 20s, 30s, maybe some over into the 40s. And when I'm doing them, they said they are called antennas, generators. They're here just to generate positive energy to affect everyone else.
Yes, that makes sense. My son is in that age group, and he and his friends are just beautiful beings who really do work toward generating communal friendships, supporting each other, non-judgment. It's beautiful.
Well, they said those kind of people can walk through a crowded mall or a store, and their energy will affect anyone that is there.
Yes.
Not consciously, they don't realize what they're doing, but their energy is supposed to be generated to affect other people. And I've had people come and say, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing here? And the second wave, they'll usually say, you're just to be. And they don't like that when they wake up. They say, but I wanted to be doing something. All you're supposed to do is just be and allow the energy to affect other people.
Yes.
But the irony of it is that a lot of the second wavers don't like people, and they don't want to be around them. Their energy bothers them, but they're supposed to be affecting people, so they stay home. So they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. A lot of the second wavers, some of the first and the second do get married, but a lot of them don't want to because it's just
It's
just
sticky, it's
against
dense, yes.
And the second wave especially, they don't want to have children because they said having children creates karma. And they don't want to make any more karma. They want to do what they're supposed to do and get out of here. They don't want to be stuck here because if they create karma, they're going to have to stay. So many of them don't want children, and they work from their home. The second wavers do, so keep away from people. but they're very gentle, loving people. And I asked them one time, well, why did the first wave have such a hard time? They said, somebody has to be the beginning. Somebody has to be the one that creates the path, the way shower. And they started, and then the others, the second wave, followed, so they had an easier time.
Yes. And that makes sense.
That's the
and now
difference.
their children are these little amazing little 3, 4, 5, 6.
Well, not theirs. It's just the third wave.
The third wave,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
The third wave of
Because some of them don't want children.
Right, some of them could be, they're born to whomever, but that next one is really interesting.
The third wave are the children. And some of them now are in their teens. But these are the hope of the world. They're the gift of the world. They're here to really make a difference. And of course, the last thing these children should be done is put on medicine and medication.
Gosh. Oh.
That's the last
Let's
thing,
not even go
because they
there.
are functioning at a different level. They have come in with all of their genetics, everything is in place, because they are a totally new species. And I've spoken at conferences about the new children where they're trying to educate the educators. And they have panels of these kids. And you know, they're always saying, well, they're disruptive in the classrooms. That's why they have to put them on the medication. And they've said at the conferences, the reason is they're disruptive is because they're bored.
Yes.
They said they say the teacher would ask them for an answer to a problem, a math problem or something. They tell them the answer. The teacher wants to know, how did you find the answer? And they said, I just know it. And to them, that's not enough. They want them to explain how they came by it. So that's very aggravating to one of these children. And another thing, they said they go over and over and over again the same material when I got it the first time. So they're bored. So what I was told to tell people, the teachers and the parents, is to give these kids challenges. But the other kids are doing the other stuff. Take these kids aside, maybe give them a special project, a paper to write, or something different that will challenge their minds. And they said, even if you just give them something, the younger ones, something to tear apart and put back together again.
Yes.
It's giving them a challenge.
So they can use their creativity and their knowledge. Yes.
Otherwise, they're sitting around, well, I don't, you know, I'm bored, I don't want to do this again. Give them something different. And that's how they should be treated. And they have a different way of thinking because they do grasp everything so quickly.
So what are they being, they've incarnated specifically for helping guide humanity, not just technologically, but in terms of science, in every which way, because of their ability to retain
like
knowledge?
I said, they're the gift of the world.
Yeah.
Nova had a special, it's been a few years ago now, where some of these kids were 10 years old and have already graduated from college.
Yes.
And some of these have already formed their own organizations. And it's interesting that a lot of the organizations they have founded have to do with helping the children of the world.
Yes. Yes, I'm aware
So
of that.
this is where they are going.
So they're going to be much more giving the gift of not just creating conscious community again on the planet, using
Getting it back to what it's supposed to be.
Getting it back to what it's supposed to be.
Because the
yes.
rest of them were caught into the wheel of karma. They don't know how to solve their own problems, let alone the world's problems. These people don't have those basic karmic problems, so they can just go in a different way. And they're putting the world into this new world, the new earth, because we're headed toward a wonderful time.
Yes, that's the good news.
Technology will be used in a wonderful way. So many wonderful things are happening. So these new children have a part in it. And the first and second waves have a part, but they've had difficulty.
And so from this point forward, it should become much more harmonious for the beings that are choosing to incarnate during this period. Because as you write about, this period is going to lead us to essentially parallel Earths in a sense.
Yes.
And this has been, I've heard about this, and even from my guides was told about this 25 years ago, and they're just very slight variances in how this occurs. But let's talk about what this portrait of consciousness is showing as to how this Earth evolves and what happens to the one that is plagued with catastrophe and so forth.
Well, I've gotten a lot of information about it. I put it in Convoluted 2 and Convoluted 3, And I'm still getting information. I'm getting bits and pieces that I didn't know about before because I've gotten so much information, but I keep asking more and more questions. And they said, we can't answer all your questions because we don't know what's going to happen. This has never happened before in the history of a universe that an entire planet will shift into another dimension. So we don't know what's going to happen. And it's the greatest show on earth. That all the ETs, the other beings are out there watching to see, are we going to be able to pull it off?
And let's talk about what it is, what we're headed for.
Okay, but down through Earth's history, we've had many, many civilizations that have come and gone. We have reached the peak of what they could do. And then it was usually because of man's greed and power, they had to be destroyed and they were brought down again. And every time, the civilizations had to begin over from the very primitive stage, the very bottom. And it took so much time to build it up again. This time, they said they don't want to take the time to do that. We're losing too much. And the Earth is a living being. It is going to go into its next incarnation. It is evolving. It's going to go whether we go or not. It doesn't care if it takes the human race with it, because we're like fleas on a dog.
Right.
And it would just as soon we all disappeared. So that's why it's going to do its thing. But if we want to go with it, we're going to have to evolve also. But because it is moving, it is evolving, and the frequencies and vibrations are changing as it moves into this other dimension. And there will be, this is where the variances come in. I get some, the answers are different, that there will be essentially two Earths.
Yes.
And one is the old Earth. And some people say, is that a physical Earth or not? I don't know, but it's a division and a shifting of the energies as it goes into another dimension. But the old Earth will still exist with all its negativity. This is where all the catastrophes will be, the wars, all of those things, because they say those people will stay with what they have created. And they have created that type of world. And in order for you to go with the Earth, you have to change your vibrations and frequencies to shift also. But you can't change your vibrations and frequencies instantly. It would destroy the human body. So the ones that are heavy into negativity, they can't shift that fast. So by the time they catch up, they won't be able to. Their vibrations and frequencies are so low, they will stay with the old Earth. But they said that doesn't matter. They'll get there eventually anyway.
So it's as long as we make a wise choice and are willing to back it up with some wise action, it's all going to be good.
This is a very important time to be alive. Many exciting things are happening.
As many of you know, the great Dolores Cannon passed away. By her side for many years was her daughter Julia Cannon, who assisted Dolores with all of her lectures and trainings. When Dolores suddenly departed, Julia was also left to finish publishing some of Dolores's unpublished and unfinished works. She's here with us today to speak about her mother and one of her last books, Hidden Sacred Knowledge. And there will be more books beyond that. We still have Convoluted Universe 5, and we'll talk about all that in a bit. But let's talk about some of what she left you. What was happening when your mom left?
Right.
You had a pile there to deal with. What did she leave you with, and what did you start prioritizing?
Well, she had this book, The Search for Hidden Sacred Knowledge. That book was pretty much done. She was almost finished with it. And she was like, okay, that book, she was like on the final read through, she was pretty much done with it. It's like, okay, so we'll finish it.
Makes sense. Done.
Right, let's just go ahead and do it. And then she had the Convoluted Universe, Book 5. She was working on those two pretty much at the same time. So that one was like right behind it.
Now, the book we're talking about today is the last one she was working on. And let's go into that. And it's a series of regressions that are really dedicated to bringing forward people's regression experiences of hidden knowledge.
Yes.
So one thing your mom talked about is the world sacred structures, because these structures are featured in this book. And she learned over the course of these thousands and thousands of regressions that there was help building these structures.
Right.
This was not. This was nothing by primitive people.
Oh,
Our
absolutely.
audience is totally on board with that and understands whether it was master beings, adepts of some kind that were here and embodied physically and taught the human species how to use certain technologies, or whether they did them with their own themselves. We won't argue that point. I mean, because that's still being revealed.
Right.
But there were a lot of people on Earth who knew of, were aware of, who witnessed, who worked alongside, and who were those beings.
Right.
And so, in the beginning of the book, one thing that came up, ISIS, the theme of ISIS in general, had kind of come up repeatedly through the book about this being an embodied person, not a mythological character. Just share a little bit about that.
Well, and in general, what we're seeing are gods and goddesses. In general, were beings from other planets. They are from the stars. And they are beings that were here they came here, and then they were here to teach the humans how to learn to be. Okay, and then they were treated as gods and goddesses just because they were not from this plane. And so Isis would have been just another one of them. But yeah, she is featured heavily in this book. Probably the time element, but maybe just one.
I wonder about that too, about why that message, why ISIS now? Why is that theme emerging?
Well, and I think in the story that was brought up is that she was now, and then she's coming back, as I said, in the end times, but it's also, and then they described the end times as being
explain
this.
the end times.
Well, they said the end times, not being that it was the end of times, but it was the change of consciousness again. So that being the end of that way of thinking. So I like that is the way that they're describing it, because that's another theme that was in Nostradamus.
Yes.
Again, they kept talking about the end times. And that was always an issue I had with the Nostradamus books, was the end times. I didn't like that negativity. But when you read the Nostradamus books, they're actually books of hope.
Right.
And so I had never seen this description of the end times.
Interesting.
And I thought that was
associated with ISIS, what is that end time scenario like?
Well, that's what they were saying. I mean, she's the sun goddess, and then here it's the end of, it's a change of consciousness. So here it's like the representation of new consciousness.
So were
here
they
she's coming
saying that
back,
Isis would be coming back in physical form?
That's what's
as
implying,
a human being
as
again?
a human being, yes.
That's what it looked like when I was reading it as well. And again, we have to remember that when people are in regression, it's not like you become brilliant or a superhero. You know only what you knew in that day.
Yes.
And there can be confusion, as I'll explain later on. There can be confusion. You may have misunderstandings at that time. You pass it on. It's not gospel. It's your perception of what was going on in the time.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the strength in numbers comes in, because she did so many of them, you start hearing these same themes, like about Isis. That Isis, and the way they described the awe people felt for Isis when they could have a glimpse of her even, that this was a very beautiful, very powerful, regal being.
I thought it was interesting. They said that people would come from all over the galaxies to come and learn from her.
Yes.
But if they were not of the right frequency, that all they would see was a statue.